Alright, I'll just do my short thoughts about week 2 here then. So maybe it's because Act 1 only has so many dungeons, maybe it's because Act 1 only has like so many bosses. It's starting to feel a little more repetitive to me already compared to like the week 1. There's still 4 more hours to play in this beta, but honestly I don't even want to play anymore. I just want to play something else. And that might really like tell you how I feel about this game right now. Also, balance-wise, the Necromancer and the Druid are both honestly even worse than the other 3 classes. They feel even more imbalanced, like Necromancer being possibly even more OP than Sorcerer, and the Druid being even worse than the Barbarian. You have legendary powers that do bring kind of like all classes to a similar-ish power level. But then again, really, I mean, Druid needs aspects to even work at all, almost. Otherwise, he just feels like utter trash. At least compared to the other classes. Maybe like Necro and Sorc need to be nerfed instead. It would be like another approach. Necro, on the other hand, for example, has 2 aspects that make you basically have full uptime on Blood Mist, which makes you invulnerable. And then like with the aspects while like dealing Corpse Explosion, which is literally like the strongest skill in the game right now, pretty much. So yeah, that's kinda weird. The skill twigs are still skill twigs even on this week. They still feel like a 4 out of 10 maybe, or like a 3 to 4 out of 10. Itemization, after looking at it a little bit more than last time. I mean, it's really just like get the right aspect and then like your build works, and if you don't have the right aspect for your build then it doesn't work. I can't really like show you much stuff right here, but maybe I should like go to town and show you there some aspects that happen in town, because there are like some, especially on the Druid, it's especially ridiculous because some of the skills of Druid just like deal no damage by default. But then you have like aspects like tripling or quadrupling the damage, and then with those it feels playable or like it's very strong even. I don't know about that kind of balance. It screams Diablo 3 through and through to me, maybe even worse than Diablo 3. And it's just like not something I personally enjoy very much. Let's see what we have here. Like this one, like I don't know, like casting an earth skill causes all storm skills to have like 20% higher crit chance. It's pretty fucking strong. Honestly, these kind of aspects seem kind of fun. Like they seem just like changing the theme a bit. I like that a lot. That's totally fine. Deal 100% increased damage to stunned enemies. I mean, it's cool until you realize you can't like really stun bosses reliably. Where's the one with companions? Or was it on the Druid? I mean, there was like, for example, aspects that give you like plus 270% more damage on companion skills and adds another companion on top, like pretty much tripling or quadrupling your damage on companions. Stuff like that, but companions feel like utter trash without that. It's so weird. And then the Lightning Druid had a couple of like implicits that deal like a certain amount of base damage, but like those base damage implicits pretty much deal more damage than all of the like Druid skills combined, as you could see like in the Storm Druid video I put out earlier this week. So yeah, I don't know, itemization might not be a 7 anymore for me, it might be worse than that. I mean, skills and animations and graphics still are obviously top-notch, they haven't changed really. And honestly, I think Druid and and Necromancer generally has very smooth feeling abilities as well. And the balance might not be great, but they feel smooth. I feel like Sorc is probably like the clunkiest class when it comes to casting abilities, like some of them just feel like really bad to cast. They're strong, like Sorc is strong, but like the abilities feel just like very clunky to cast. So, I don't know. I mean, the rest is pretty much the same as like last week. So overall, I would say this game rather went down in rating for me than up compared to last week. The Druid was fun. I mean, the gameplay is fun, like if stuff were just like balanced properly. But I don't know. I mean, that's I think it for like my thoughts for this week. I hope balance is gonna feel different on release. I hope they're gonna change some stuff, and I hope Paragon levels are gonna be like a bit more interesting. Otherwise, I probably won't buy nor play this game, to be honest. Yeah, thanks for watching. Obviously, we all have concerns about Diablo 4.
Hi, Scissorin here with another video, and I just tried the Druid, and I'll make a video about everything about the Druid, but the Druid started pointing out some problems in Diablo 4 that wasn't as apparent with a lot of the other classes, and especially with the new information, legendaries are increased drop rate for the beta. So that means that you will not be decked out in full legendaries by 25, and that pretty much changes everything, because that means that it's going to make a lot bigger difference when you actually get them. So with that in mind, I was playing, and first off, resource generation on Druid and Barb is really bad. It's also extremely weird on Druid how you can hit like debris, barrels, and stuff like that, and suddenly you're gaining resources. But you're not gaining resources by regenerating. But hitting a barrel is okay. Or a deer. You're a druid, and you can kill a deer to get some more resources. Very druid-like. Obviously, the last one is more of a joke, but resource generation felt really weird, and
the entire builder spinner system is just kind of garbage.
I've gone into Diablo 4, and with everything they're saying, they are aiming for a more casual audience. They've said that the skill tree is very on purpose to be more simple, because they want it to be an easy game to get into. But here's where I start having a problem. That's all well and good, but there's several things in the game that is not catered to more casual players. There's a few things that are really big issues. So first off, the resource...
I mean, there's like no search bars. There's search... You can search for like keywords, sure, but there's like no search bar in the skill tree. There's no search bar in like your stash. The explanation of keywords is okay, but
either is fine, but they do such a big combination of both, and it really sets apart skills that don't have either. For example, Corpse Explosion I think is done really well. It has no cooldown, no resource cost, and the only limitation, which ends up being the resource cost, is corpses being there, which you have a lot of different ways to generate. So Corpse Explosion ends up being really good and sets itself apart so much. Now you have a lot of other skills that some have insane cooldowns, some have cooldowns and resource costs. There's this like insane amount of either something has a crazy long cooldown, or it's so extremely cost that you can only cast it 2 or 3 times. We do see that we have things on items.
I mean, you could argue that like the Corpse Explode is a bit OP, because with one passive, it literally like generates the resource as well for you. It generates resource like crazy, actually. So in my opinion, like it would be fine if either the damage would be like a little bit lower, or if the skill actually like needed some essence to cast as well. This class is generating essence by default after all. And especially like if you put the damage of this explosion into perspective to like other classes, to be honest. Do keep in mind that this is basically a zoomer as well, in my opinion, and I feel like he just likes damage a shit ton in all of these games, and like just likes exploding the entire screen with like no effort, which is like fine if you're like playing in the first difficulty, right? Keep in mind that like literally everyone was playing the second difficulty already, and some classes still just one-shot everything, like Necro and Sword for the most part, and Rogue to a certain extent as well. Thanks for the Prime, Puffin Eggnog, welcome on.
It's like resource cost reduction, etc. It does feel a little bit extreme early. Obviously, I can't speak about the endgame. This is only level 25. The reason I want to make this video is that I hope by giving feedback, and if a lot of people talk about it, that they'll be like, okay, this is definitely something that isn't in the endgame. We don't have to worry about it from Blizzard's point of view. Like, this doesn't become a problem later, and then that's all fine, right? Then all my complaints are irrelevant. Or that they're like, man, that is a really good point. If people are feeling like this at level 25 and they know that it doesn't get better in the in-game, then they maybe should think about doing something. Because the main important thing is that people have fun and that the game is accessible and easy for the majority of people. And the fact that Barb not only doesn't regenerate its resource, but it degenerates it. Which, if you've been out of...
I mean, it's always been a Barb thing, though. Like, degenerating Fury. And Barb has like actually like tons of ways to like generate fury with like shouts and so on as well. I feel like the Barb. I feel like the Barb might be maybe like the only class where like the spender generator system somewhat feels like okay because it's such a Barb thing.
Combat a few seconds, you start losing your range. That feels really bad. So Barb and
Also, shrines.
if you've been out of combat a few
like,
seconds,
imagine attacking when you have a shrine, you know, like this.
you start losing.
Like, why would you attack here? What are you doing this? Why are you attacking? Like, just wait for the explosion. These shrines are such garbage design.
That feels really bad. So Barb and Druid just has awful resource generation. Another thing, this is just straight up anti-casual. The respec cost. So the respec cost goes up the more you do it, but it goes up permanently. Apparently this is intentional, where they have said that at some point they want people to make a new character instead of be respecing permanently. That is okay and all well and good as a philosophy, but I don't think it goes very well over with a more casual audience, where generally, especially more casual players, aren't even on Twitch, they aren't on YouTube, they aren't checking build guides, and they want to experiment and play around with different things. At least like on a basic level. Like, I'm not talking about...
I mean, like, yeah, it really depends like what you want the game to be. Do you want the game to be like full casual or not? And right now it's maybe like a little bit weird of a mix between the two. I would say it's still like heavy on the... I feel like, I don't know, man. It feels like the game is supposed to be like a game for people that don't want to like think too much about a build, but what I like grind maybe more than the true casual player.
Making
it would fit well with like Blizzard game philosophy in general.
Here, I'm just seeing what is that ability like? What is that ability like? And this really prevents that when eventually your gold cost will become so big that you have to make a new character. And
what they could do is like they could tie the gold cost to like levels. So say like at level 20 it costs like 20 gold to respec, level 50 it costs like 2000 gold to respec, and so on and so on. Then like the higher level you are, the less and less you can respec, but you're not like really punished for like respecing a lot at low levels.
Never goes down. Somebody said that it'll go down between seasons, but obviously that is only a thing for the people that are playing non-laddered. If you are respecing a lot in a season on an active character, you will at some point just, okay, well now it's 1.2 million gold to respec one node, it's time to make a new character. So I definitely prefer Last Epoch's respec system there being
De-leveling for respec and lose XP? I don't know about that. Like for low levels, Diablo 4's respec system was way less punishing, I would say. In my opinion. Like it was way less punishing for low levels. Like up to level 25 than Last Epoch.
Respec at any time with no cost.
With no cost, yeah, places. Like it's fucking experience that you... Like the only point when you respec for no cost in Last Epoch is like when you're level 90 or like 80 plus. That's because then you level your skills so quickly again. But like at lower levels, like
and you just have to...
You lose power like for such a long period of time until you like get the XP back.
Very quickly level back the skill up. And that goes very fast. It just seems a little bit at odds with making a more simple casual game.
Literally every mob in the game drops XP. I mean, literally every mob in Diablo 4 also drops gold and like items that you can sell for gold, which you can use to respec as well. And then you get like full power of the skill instantly. Whereas in LE you have to... Like you can't... The thing is, right, if you respec with gold, you can kind of like bank gold first, and then you know, okay, if I respec now, I will get 100% of my power instantly. But if you need to respec with XP, but you cannot like bank that XP, then you always need to like get into your build again, like level your build basically, and you always have like some power that drops first, and then you have to like gain it back gradually. So I don't know, man. Like at least I really don't agree with like his take on like Ellie's respec system being free. That's like just not true. It's actually more punishing than Diablo 4. It's like way more punishing. And there is a way to like counteract gold cost, because you can just like have gold before you respec, and you get instantly like 100% of your power. Whereas at LA you don't, because you cannot like
a lot of the
farm
characters
XP.
early aren't, especially with legendaries being increased drop rate, going to really give the same power fancy that I think a lot of people are expecting. There is such a large percentage that love Diablo 3 for this. Now, Diablo 3 is my least favorite ARPG because it tells you what to play, it's incredibly easy, and it is just the entire power fancy of just right-clicking down monsters. But there are so many people that love that, and a lot of people want Diablo 4 to be that. They don't necessarily want it to be a struggle. They don't want low pack size, like the density we saw, and obviously I can't talk about leaked content, but
density is kind of bad.
some of that too. It doesn't look great for the power fancy of just mowing down monsters. A lot of what we've seen, it's a lot more like specific and more thought out, like, okay, this zone has some monsters, but now you're not seeing a monster for like a minute or so. And that also seems a little bit at odds to me. So while there's a lot of things that I'm like, yeah, this is very clearly designed for more simplistic play or more casual players, there are some things that just seems incredibly at odds at it. So
just to respect like PoE, nah, respect and PoE is too like punishing early, in my opinion, way too punishing early. Like you don't have enough regrets.
By sort of being like dancing between these lines and not necessarily in a good,
if you want to like actually experiment a lot, they're like not even close to enough regrets.
good way, I'm just wondering, who will Diablo 4 end up being for? I want games to be very, very different from each other. It's cool if they take some things, I don't mind that. But I want Last Epoch, Diablo 4, and Path of Exile to be very strong identities and very different so that people have more choice. And I was expecting it to be Diablo 4 will be the most casual one for casual players, very easy, gives you the power fancy, gives you the hack and slash. And then you have Last Epoch somewhere in the middle, and you have Path of Exile for the people that, you know, you shut out the light, you really sit there for 16 hours calculating out your build, and you really want that complexity, you want that insane endgame, etc.
Yeah, that would be fine, but then like Diablo 4 is just so grindy. Like it's as grindy as D3 when it comes to like just getting items, and if you don't get them, you're not powerful. But it feels even worse because the initial like balance disparity between the classes is just like crazy. Like you need aspects to make skills and classes work, otherwise they're just like unplayable basically. So like you need to balance the initial like skill twig in a way that you have like already choices as a casual player to make, and I don't know, like right now it feels already as if the game is telling you what to play with drops, but if you don't get a drop, then you just can't play anything unless you're playing but if you don't get drops, then the game tells you to, well, just play a Sork, just play a Rogue, or like just play a Necromancer especially. The game tells you just don't play a Barb and just don't play a Druid unless you have a drop, like a certain drop, right? And then like once you have the drop, the game also like tells you, well, now you play this skill from that class.
Great, but I'm starting to wonder, is that going to be Diablo 4? Honestly, it's just something we're going to have to wait and see. I just want to make this video, get people talking about it a little bit. What do you think? Do you think I'm onto something? Do you think I'm stupid? Keep in mind, this is only a level 25 beta, and we don't have the full game. I've never had access to the endgame beta or anything, so I know nothing about it.
Disparity between classes and grind, that's Diablo 2 in a nutshell. Yeah, maybe they did get it right. I don't know. I feel like it's just weird because I don't think you want to force people to like play a Necro or a Sork when they really want to play like a Druid, you know? Like when somebody just wants to play a Druid, like just let the guy play the Druid and not like feel terrible about it. I don't know. I mean, it's fine to have like some disparity, but like when a Druid like literally takes like 6 hours to level up to 25, and I don't know, like a Sork takes like 1.5 hours. It's a little like too much lopsided, you know? Like, I don't know.
Aside from leaks that we're seeing on Reddit and stuff.
It's kind of terrible.
One thing that's so scary to me about the legendary items with the reduced drop rate, it basically becomes the problem I have with sets, at least. Well, there aren't sets because it is one item. The problem I have with sets is that it homogenizes gear and tells you what skill to play in Diablo 3. But it definitely will end up telling you what skill to play. So I would rather like to see that either it has an impact on multiple skills or multiple things,
This is good. Like when PoE players talk about sets being bad and so on, they usually like think about sets the way they're done in Diablo 3, right? And in Diablo 3, they're like telling you what to play. But it's not like a set or not set problem, it's a design of the power on the item or the sets problem that like just tells you what to play. Like it can be on one item, like in this game it can be just on one aspect that like already tells you what to play, or it can be on a set. So like you can actually make sets. You could even have sets in Path of Exile in my opinion probably, which, well, don't tell you what to play, but are more interesting, you know, and like a bit more versatile.
I would love to see the removal of the damage increase, because just changing something in a neat way is already, or should already be, the exciting part of the legendary. When it both affects the way it plays, and not in a negative way, and triples your damage, then it kind of ends up being a no-brainer. Now, hopefully at the end game, when we do have a lot of legendaries, you end up the choice between a lot of these different skills, but I am a little bit worried about seeing in this early 25 demo that some skills are so much ahead of others, regardless of even having legendaries. As soon as you unlock Chain Lightning, Fireball, Frozen Orb, Chain Lightning is just miles ahead of everything else by default.
Exactly. Like if you don't play the one skill that's like literally like 3 to 4 times better than the other skills, you're gonna level like 3 times slower, right? So like why would you play anything else but Chain Lightning, for example, right? That's like, you might want to play the other fantasy. It's like when I started playing the Necromancer, right? I wanted to play like some kind of like blood magic tank, which probably actually feels okay. But then you check out the numbers and you're like, oh, this bone skill deals the same damage as the other skills, but can shotgun and like basically deals like 3 times the damage because of the shotgun. And then you have the Bone Spear, which just like deals insane damage compared to the other skills, and has a vulnerable debuff on top, which gives you like a 20% damage bonus to enemies on top. And it's like, okay, either I play Bone skill, like the Bone's triple shot skill, the Bone Spear, and then like Corpse Explode, or I'm just trolling, right? Because everything else is kind of like, I don't know, man.
Another thing that is very dated
so
and I
weird
hope
and
gets
bad.
fixed before launch of Diablo 4 is the dungeon design. Obviously, a lot of the bosses are just reused. So if you're jumping between several dungeons, sometimes you'll just see the exact same boss that you just fought. That's pretty lame.
Yeah.
A lot of the designs of the dungeons themselves are very like tedious and mazy and not necessarily fun to go through. But the number one thing that is really bad is there are some dungeons that you have to kill every single monster down to the last one in an area before you're able to progress.
Honestly, that kind of quest, yes, it's horrible, but it would be okay if it only spawned in certain dungeon layouts that had no dead ends ever at all. Then it would be kind of okay, actually. If you had like one linear path and then you get that quest, then it's kind of okay. But again, they're like mixing and matching the wrong kind of like designs here, I feel like. Like backtracking like left and right and left with like no, I don't know. In general, like Last Epoch has a similar problem, honestly, like with map creation. Like some of the maps in the monolith, for example, they also have like too many dead ends. And what you want in usually like endgame maps is you always want at least like 2 paths, like one to go up and then another one to go down. So you're like constantly, you have like the constant combat feel, right? You're like constantly fighting mobs at least. So you don't feel like too bad about like backtracking and doing nothing. And Diablo 4 also like fails that in many dungeons. And then of course there's the thing with like, there aren't enough like layouts. They just feel the same. There are like, I don't know, maybe like 5 bosses in total in Act 1, but there's like 23 dungeons. So every 4 dungeons, like, I don't know, like you have the same boss basically in like 4 or 5 dungeons, more or less, just like reskinned or like a slightly different name, if at all. Like sometimes they literally just call it Blood Bishop in like 3 different dungeons and they have literally the same name. And then you have some dungeons like Den Mother, right? Like the Lights, whatever it's called, like Lights Watch, I think, dungeon. That one is fine. Layout is completely kind of fine. You have like sometimes multiple like ways to go. There's like some slight backtracking maybe here and then, but if it's only like one small corridor, it's totally fine. And the quests are also like not too tedious, and the boss itself is like unique. They should have done like 5 to 6 dungeons in Act 1, all completely unique, like completely unique layouts, completely unique like quests that like fit the layout as well, and then like completely unique bosses at the end. And then it would be fun and memorable and fine. I can't even remember a single like other name apart from like Den Mother, because they're all like so samey and you just forget about them like after doing them. It's so terrible. I don't know.
And sometimes on top of this, that also has that you need to pick up every single essence that monster drops. These are like super outdated concepts from the year 2000 that generally nearly every other ARPG is solved by having, well, you only need to kill 90% and then you can progress.
Yeah.
Or if it is kill everything, it's a very, very linear zone where you're very unlikely to actually have to go back. So very, very weird concepts that I hope get fixed between now and launch. Another thing that ends up being really frustrating is obviously the level scaling. I've talked about this a lot in previous videos, but it also became a lot more noticeable on the Druid. And one thing that I really felt is destroying the game for me is every single time I level up, my character becomes weaker and not stronger. This is basically super...
That is because the only thing you get when leveling up is a point in the skill twig, right? If you got actual attribute points to spend, if you got actual like maybe 3 skill points to spend that you can either choose to spend to like meaningful passives and or skills that also scale up properly with level and not like only 1% more damage per point, then it would be totally fine, because then if you spend those points correctly, the player would get more power level per level compared to monsters. But the skill twig doesn't have enough choice. Like sometimes you kind of only like pick skills that basically do nothing, like putting a second point into a skill that gives you like what 2% more damage on that skill. You're not really like feeling more powerful, whereas like enemies get for like more health and damage, so they get like actually stats and you don't. Like that's the actual problem. Like in my opinion, it's totally fine to have a total like completely scaling world, because if you don't have a scaling world, then going back to an earlier zone later because you want to do like another dungeon again will feel bad. But that's only fine if you give the player like proper progress, like proper power level progress per level as well. Like for example in Titan Quest or Grim Dawn, right? In Diablo 4, the only power progress apart from like unlocking a new like broken skill is, well, mainly unlocking a new broken aspect that you like get from a drop mostly, or like maybe some dungeon clearing, and like generally just like getting eye level, like higher eye level on items. But if you don't get good items, then you don't get stronger. So it's like you only get stronger if you get good RNG, and that just feels bad in a way. Like gear power should be always like more on top and not just like basically mandatory, otherwise you feel weaker and weaker and it feels bad.
Reverse of any other ARPG. You only feel stronger when you get a huge power spike in item or you unlock some sort of big combo.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, you actively feel punished, and not in a small way. You feel it every single level that you are getting punished whenever you level up, and that is very rough. A lot of the other classes were so overpowered in comparison to the Druid that you don't feel it as much. But on Druid, it feels even worse than what Oblivion felt like.
Yeah.
An important thing to remember, even if they don't nail it at launch, they have said that they are going to be doing beefy league updates. And every time I talk about that on stream, people sadly say copium, but you do have to remember Blizzard is very a for-profit company, and we see very clear reasons for why they themselves would have a big reason to make sure that the seasons are beefy. That is why I feel that it's a lot less copium. They're gonna be selling cosmetics. They're gonna be selling the battle pass. Whereas like previous things like Diablo 3, they would just have to hope that new players are buying the game. So they're a lot less incentivized to actually have big updates outside of expansions, which is no longer the case. So yeah, I do think that there is a good chance that we will get beefy updates because of the financial incentive. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts below. This is just some of the big concerns I have. So obviously this ends up being a little bit of a, well, it can probably come off as a negative video, but hopefully understand where I'm coming from. And I really want the game to do well and be a great game, especially for casual players. So thanks for watching. Sub if you like the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.
I mean, for the most part, I think he's right. the thing I had to disagree the most is like respecking feeling more punishing in Diablo 4 than last Epoch. That's not true in my opinion at all. It's like the other way around. And yeah, he did say that like the scaling has more like a problem on the player side than on the world side. Like, yeah, there were some people that said like, I just hated how enemies scale and that's like why the game is trash. I'm refining because of that. I mean, how are you supposed to have like a true open world that's like worth revisiting if the content isn't scaling, you know? Like, it's just, that doesn't work. How many players said I'm a god gamer and I will not play the baby difficulty? Yeah, that's also true. Like, how many players like expect all classes to be as strong as Necro and Sork while having played the second difficulty, you know? I feel like it would probably be better overall for the game if every class felt maybe not like the druid, but maybe like a bit more like the rogue or the barb on the second difficulty. And by default, you should probably play the first one, right? Not the second one. You should only play the second one if you have like some twink gear that like helps you level a bit quicker, maybe. Like, did anybody like ever play the first one? Did you play the first one, Kerplunk? I don't even know. Like, I personally don't know how the first one feels like, because the second one was generally already easy enough. It just felt like bad in the druid because the druid was, you know, like comparatively like very weak compared to the other classes. When you respect Swarmblade at level 5, did I feel punished? Yes, of course. I felt way more punished compared to like in Diablo 4 when I literally had 100% of my power level the second I respect. Like in Diablo 4, if I respect the same thing in Diablo 4, right? My Swarmblade would be level 12 instantly, you know? Like, I would have had to pay gold, but I would be level 12 instantly on the Swarmblade. So yes, I would feel more powerful. So yes, I felt more punished in Last Epoch. Because in Diablo 4, there, like in any other game really, apart from Last Epoch, there is a way to like plan for respecking, right? You can plan to bank some gold to respec, but you can't bank XP to respec. And you could argue that you got there in like 15 minutes anyway. That's not really true. It took like half an hour at least, but yeah. Like, say in hardcore, like, what if you die because it takes too long to like get to your power level again? I don't know, man. I mean, you could argue that it's like less punishing, okay? Like, I can understand your argument. I just disagree with it, that's fine. But like saying there's no respec cost whatsoever is just wrong. Like, there is a respec cost. You pay with XP. Like, whether the XP is more punishing than gold or not, that's like up for debate. And like, I can understand why people say it's less punishing. I would personally say it's actually more punishing, but I can understand like people saying it's less punishing. I can totally understand that. But saying there's no respec cost is just wrong. Like, it's just not correct. You can get Tome of Experience, then respec. Can you stash them? Like, if you can't stash them, then you can't really like do it, you know? You can run an echo with Tome of Experience and not respec and then pick up Tome of Experience afterwards. That is true, but like, yeah, the issue is like when you're between level like at like the very lowest levels, it doesn't really matter either, but like between level 20 to like 60, I feel like it matters the most. And that's usually also like the level range where you want to like experiment pro like the most as well. Yeah, leave it on the ground, respect and pick up. You can do that like the one time when you're running an echo with Tome of Experience, then you can do that. But you can't like, if you could put them in like your bank, you know, like if you can put them in your bank, then it would be like totally fine, but you can't. You have to like be in a very specific situation, right? You have to be in that specific situation where you are running an echo, where you have Tome of Experience at the end, and then respec before you pick them up. And even when you pick them up, like you don't get to like max level of the skill that you would be at. Like you get maybe like 1 or 2 more levels, but that's it. You don't get like max level. I don't know. If you could bank them, like if you could pick them up and put them in your stash. Then it would be fine in my opinion, actually.